Welcome to Double Wins. Today's topic is science. Now, a lot of people think science is synonymous with truth. But in reality, it couldn't be more wrong. Now, let's start from the beginning. Aristotle is probably the one who was the first to have this idea of science. Although in his time, science and philosophy were not clearly cut. Aristotle divided knowledge into physics and metaphysics. Physics is not the same idea as today's, physics we learn in university. Aristotle's idea of physics is knowledge that you can gain by observation. You observe nature and you postulate its mechanism. That branch of knowledge he calls physics. And metaphysics, we know the prefix meta means beyond something, after something. So metaphysics literally translates to after physics or beyond physics or above physics. The concept of metaphysics is the basis for philosophy. He considered if something cannot be observed but can be explained by logical deduction to arrive to a conclusion, that branch of knowledge he calls it metaphysics. So as we can see, both physics and metaphysics involves logical reasoning. The only difference is physics is observed. It was not until the conception of modern science that science actually branched away from philosophy. At the basis of modern science are experiments. So one forms a hypothesis, then we set up a laboratory and trying to prove or disapprove the hypothesis. If enough experiments proves this hypothesis to be true, then it becomes a theory. If after a certain time all the experiments done by most scientists failed to disapprove this theory, then it becomes a law. Hence we got Newton's law of gravity, Einstein's law of relativity. It's the highest credit a scientific idea can get. But it's still not the truth. As we all know, Newton's law of gravity was disproven by Einstein. And with the coming of quantum mechanics, Einstein's law of relativity does not apply. Although Einstein tried in his lifetime to find a unifying theory of the universe, in other words, the ultimate law or the truth of the universe, but he failed. So science, in essence, is a progression of ideas which are gradually getting closer and closer to the truth. But it will never reach the truth. It can be infinitely close to truth, but it will never become equal to the truth. It's almost a universal phenomenon in China for people to regard science as being equivalent to the truth. Hence, the Communist Party has this ridiculous slogan: the fundamental policy of the country is a scientific developmental perspective. Now, I can guarantee you a Harvard professor would not be able to explain to you or even understand what is a scientific developmental perspective. But that was the fundamental policy of a country for a decade. So what is the definition of science? Science has nothing to do with being correct or not correct, let alone being the truth, being the ultimate truth. Science, in essence, is a way of thinking, or in action, it is a method of conducting studies. Philosophical studies is based on logical reasoning. Scientific studies are based on experiments. A lot of times, the results of the experiment are counterintuitive or illogical, but we'll still treat the results as a scientific results, even if it had no logic in it. Let's look at a couple of examples. The theory of evolution. I think that's a very proper term. Evolution is a theory. We don't call it the law of evolution because it does not have irrefutable evidences to make it a law. It's still in the intermediate stage between a hypothesis and a law. It's a theory. It is highly close to the truth, but we should not treat it as the ultimate truth, and not letting other people with different views to speak. In science, even after it becomes a law, it can be proven to be untrue, let alone being a theory. The second example is this global warming hype. Whenever I heard the term settled science, climate change is a settled science, I don't know if these are the words of real scientists. If there are scientists who truly believe that climate change is settled science, then these scientists are self-disqualifying because they don't even know what science is. But I suspect most scientists agree with this phrase, settled science, not because of their ignorance, but because of their self-interest. After all, everybody needs a good paying job. If you make climate change an immediate and existential threat, then government will allocate huge amounts of money to research this subject, so all these scientists can keep their cushy jobs. Now, I don't believe 97% of scientists agree on this subject, but I do believe at least more than half of the scientists agree with the mainstream conclusion, this so-called settled science. And I believe they do that the majority of them doing it just to keep money flowing. Now, I'm not saying the other camp is all altruistic. They might have self-interest too. For example, the energy section corporations might sponsor them to come up with opposite theories. So when you think about it, it's really a sad state. When you think about it, it is really a sad state that scientists today are driven by self-interest, not by the obligation to search for the truth. Even though science can never get us to the ultimate truth, it can only get us infinitely close to truth at its best. Here's my 2 cents about science. Thank you.